We often hear that the pre-tribulation rapture is not taught in the Bible. We hear that it is a recent invention made up by men probably like J.N. Darby in the 1830s. But do you want a really powerful argument for the pre-tribulation rapture? Stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Lee Brainard. Welcome to Soothkeep and another edition of Prophecy in the Crucible. My mission is truth, particularly truth in the prophetic arena. Truth at any cost, truth above every other consideration. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most powerful arguments in the New Testament for the pre-tribulation rapture, the 24 elders in Revelation chapters 4 and 5. In my mind, this is absolutely conclusive proof of a pre-tribulation rapture. These 24 elders, in my estimation, are the representatives of the church in heaven, glorified, resurrected, rewarded, prior to the opening of the first seal. Let's start by looking at the exclusionary arguments. First of all, they can't be angels, folks. In Revelation chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, we read, "They sang a new song. You have redeemed us to God by your blood." Folks, angels can't be redeemed. Only man can be redeemed. In Hebrews 2:16, we read an allusion to this where we read that the Lord Jesus took on himself not the nature of angels, but he took on himself the seed of Abraham. He's a human being, and the redemption is only for human beings because the blood shed was human being blood. A lot of people don't really understand the difference between angels and humans. Angels are wired in such a way that it was easier for them to stay right than to sin, and only 1/3 of them fell. Man is wired in such a way that every last human being fell. It's impossible not to fall, and we can only be redeemed by grace. And this is right at the heart of the redemption by blood issue. Secondly, these 24 elders can't be Old Testament saints. The Old Testament saints don't receive their reward until the resurrection on the last day, which is the second coming. In Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, we read, "But go your way to the end, or until the end, for you shall rest and stand in your lot at the end of days." And in Daniel chapter 12, 1 through 3, we read, "At that time there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." Notice here that the reward of the Old Testament saints comes after the time of tribulation that's worse than any other tribulation in the history of the world. That means it comes at the second coming. Another argument that these are not Old Testament saints is the fact that they are already rewarded during the 70th week. In Revelation 4:4 we read, "Round about the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns," that's Stephanoi, the plural is Stephanos. These are the reward crowns. They had on their heads crowns of gold. Folks, these folks are sitting on their thrones. They are enthroned, and they are crowned with their reward crowns. This implies that the resurrection, the rapture of the church has already happened. We don't get our thrones and we don't get our crowns until the resurrection. These folks have their crowns and they have the rewards during the 70th week. Therefore, they have to be the church and they cannot be the Old Testament saints. Now, the third point is that they can't be the church prior to the resurrection. This really ties into the same points we just made. In Revelation 4:4, we see that these saints are sitting on thrones and they have their reward crowns. This is not the church who's asleep in Jesus. They've died, they've left the scene of the earth, and they're waiting in heaven, absent from the body, present with the Lord. They're waiting for the resurrection and the rapture. These saints have already enjoyed the resurrection and the rapture. They have their thrones and they have their crowns. So in summary to this point, recall, first of all, that they are blood bought. Revelation 5:8-9 tells us that they are bought by the blood of Christ. The second point is that they already have the reward during the 70th week. This means they can't be Old Testament saints and they can't be the church waiting for the rapture and resurrection. They're already rewarded. This positively limits the identification of the 24 elders to the church after the rapture and resurrection. Let's look a little more deeply now into the context and to frame a robust argument for the rapture understanding, for the church after the rapture understanding. Starting in Revelation 1:19, we read, "Write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter." This is the Greek phrase metatauta. Now, the things you have seen are the matters of the first chapter. That's the things he just got done witnessing. The things that are the matters of the second and third chapter. That's the church age. That's what's going on right now on earth that started in his time and is continuing to the present time. The things which are hereafter, metatauta, begins in chapter 4, verse 1. And there we read, "After this is metatauta, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet, talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show you things which must be hereafter." Folks, this is a typology of the rapture. This is John's experience of the rapture in a vision, or maybe it was in reality. He is taken up to heaven and he gets a glimpse of the throne room after the rapture, after these things, after the church age. Now, when we come deeper into chapter 4 and verse 4, which we've already looked at, we read, "Round about the throne were 24 thrones," not chairs, thrones. "And upon the thrones," not chairs, thrones, "I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment." This is the white raiment that we get in the resurrection. "And they had on their heads crowns of gold." They're sitting on their thrones, they're enthroned, and they are rewarded. They have their crowns. In Revelation 4:10, we see these 24 elders, they cast their crowns, their golden crowns, their reward crowns, they cast them at the feet of the Lamb. In Revelation chapter 5, verses 1 through 7, we have a longer passage, and here we see 24 blood-bought, rewarded elders in the courts of heaven, watching when the Lamb takes the scroll from the hand of the Father. In Revelation chapter 8, verses 8 through 10, we read that the 24 blood-bought, rewarded elders are singing the new song. "You are worthy to take the book and open the seals, for you were slain, and you have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every kindred, tongue, tribe, and nation. And you have made us kings and priests unto our God, and we shall reign on earth." Notice these things. They're redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. And they are kings and priests. Does that sound familiar to passages and promises that address the church's future? And they're going to reign on earth. Does that sound familiar? Folks, you can't get around it. These saints are blood-bought. They're rewarded. They're enthroned. They're kings and priests, and they're going to reign with Christ. This is the church in heaven after the rapture. And when we come to Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, we see the Lamb opening the first seal. So the church goes up in Revelation 4:1 in the rapture. In chapters 4 and 5, they're in the presence of the Lamb, sitting on their thrones. They're wearing their crowns. They're rewarded. They're blood-bought. They're redeemed. They're the priests and kings of the Lord. They're worshiping the Lord. And in His presence, they see the Father hand the scroll to the Son. And then in chapter 6, they see the Son start opening those seals. You can't get around this. The church is in heaven when the first seal is opened. This is an amazing point. If the church is in heaven when the first seal is opened, then the church is taken out of the world prior to the Antichrist and prior to the time of tribulation. This is the end of the question. It's open and shut. There's no objection that can be made to this that has any merit. This raises a question. Who are these 24 elders? Why do we have 24 elders representing the church? Why doesn't it just say the church? Good question. And there's a good answer. The 24 elders here are the 24 heads of the 24 courses of the New Testament royal priesthood, who are kings and priests. We see the typology of this in the Old Testament. In 1 Chronicles 24, I'm not going to turn you there. We're not going to read it. I just encourage you to go read that chapter. But in 1 Chronicles 24, David arranged the temple service into 24 courses of priests. They rotated their job. The same thought is brought out in Josephus' Antiquities 7.365. And the Old Testament priesthood is a shadow of the heavenly priesthood. It's a shadow of the New Testament church priesthood, even as the Old Testament physical temple is a shadow and a picture of the New Testament spirit-filled temple of the Lord. So in conclusion, the presence of the representatives of the blood-bought rewarded church in heaven in Revelation chapters 4 and 5, prior to the opening of the first seal, is rock solid, absolutely conclusive proof of the pre-tribulation rapture. Men have to poke their eyes out to miss this clear testimony. Friends, trust this clear testimony. I'm going to say this again. Just trust this clear testimony. Don't let yourself be rattled by people that raise all kind of fears about, but what if we end up going through the tribulation? Folks, we are not going to go through the great tribulation. Don't be rattled or shaken by sixth seal rapture theories. Don't be rattled or shaken by seventh trumpet rapture theories. They have no merit at all. As soon as you see and understand that the glorified, rewarded, resurrected church is in heaven in Revelation chapters 4 and 5, that question is completely done. It's over. It's answered. And don't be shaken by these claims that it's not fair for the church to miss the 7 years of tribulation under the Antichrist. Whose definition of fair are we talking about? The Lord has already given the church 2,000 years of tribulation down here on earth, where she is keeping the word of His patience, where she is being kept from the evil one. Why would anyone have a complaint if God decides to remove the church out of the world after 2,000 years of tribulation and give Israel 7 last years of tribulation? so that she has a second chance to receive her Messiah and a second chance to inherit all of her Old Testament promises through the Messiah. She cannot inherit her promises apart from the blood of the Messiah, apart from faith in the Messiah. So folks, there you have it. The pre-tribulation rapture is completely proved by Revelation chapters 4 and 5. Don't be rattled. Don't be shaken. Stay encouraged. Eyes wide open, brain engaged, heart on fire. See you next time.